1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Welcome back, Draft Kings and Queens. This is Mike Ford with the Racial Draft Podcast. I am not quite flying solo this week, but I am not joined by my co-pilot, Kia. She is currently flying solo missions and doing all that crazy star queen Kia Lisi business on her dragons. But we have been joined by, from the Black delegation, Randy. Randy, what's up? Wow.
I am feeling wonderful and I'm ready to be here.
That is great. That is great. As always, if this is your first episode, I apologize. But what we are going to do, as we do every week, is race bend, aka change the complexion of the comic book universe 1 week at a time, one draft pick at a time, as it were. However, we're just a few sleeps away. I mean, a couple weeks from the season 3, the third season of the Racial Draft. And, this now is as good a time as any to look back and look ahead to what we do with the Racial Draft. Randy, you've been good enough to participate in the draft. What are your overall thoughts about what you were doing, what you were aiming for as a representative of the Black delegation?
Well, my idea first and foremost is to, I want to try to find characters that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
If it's somebody who is already Black, then that's great. But if not, then I still want to be able to see some aspect of that character. Like, how can I, how would that be turned around some kind of way into a Black person that I could see myself meeting? Who somebody who I feel like could possibly be someone that I could meet in my life, or who I would, that neighbor in my neighborhood, or who I would meet, or who I would see on TV and be like, oh, that's an aspiring Black person I would know or care about.
Interesting. So, I mean, obviously, like you talked about characters who are Black characters, and we've talked offline and online about the idea that the various big two, particularly the smaller of the big two, companies not necessarily doing their Black characters justice.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we here, obviously I'm Black as well, and we like to imagine that they will kind of get their heads out of their asses and push certain Black characters, but we know that for whatever reason some of these characters don't fit in their long-term plans. When you think about characters to racially draft, do you think about the idea that, based on past performance or based on past experience, certain characters aren't going to get the push that we might want?
Well, honestly, I feel like as much as I would love to be able to sort of see a plan, I have a hard time really seeing a plan. Like, say for example, with DC, we recently talked about how they're going to put out a comic miniseries with Aqualad,
Mm-hmm.
transitioning to become Aquaman, and I'm
Right.
like, that is great. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I think that he's a compelling character, whether he stays as Aqualad for a few more years or whether they want to, make the push to let him take the next step.
Mhm.
But, you know, just given their past with Black characters, with brown characters, with really anybody outside of like their main Justice League heroes, who coincidentally are like all white almost.
Mhm.
But they just haven't had a consistency with pushing those characters. And so I really have to feel as though there is some sort of a, a a reason to believe that they might pop up down the line. Like I really have to see it. I can't just go on optimistic feelings for certain characters just because the record is too clear. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you have
Now, what
uh
I would say, sorry to jump in, but what I
okay.
would say is that, we've seen Marvel kind of, dabble with the idea of kind of giving characters the chance to shine under a mantle, and hopefully that leading to the showcase of the character and the character becoming more popular.
Right.
In the instance of what DC did. I don't remember if I asked you about this. And in the DC Future State, did you read the majority of those Future State books?
I don't know if I would say the majority, but I have read a decent portion of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I kind of liked about Future State, but I'm a little bit wary of, is that, in this kind of indeterminate future where all these, new characters are in these legacy roles,
Hmm.
it was almost a test of whether DC could bridge the gap from, like you said, a lot of these Justice League characters are white, not just white, but white males, cishet white males,
Yeah.
having this test of, in the future, these characters are a little bit more diverse, by sort of testing the waters in that respect, and giving people a taste of a, one might argue, marvelized future that could open the door to some of these characters getting the push in the present day. I mean, obviously, Aqualad was Aquaman in the future state. Yara Flor was Wonder Woman in that same state. Jace, don't call me Tim Fox, was Batman, even though Bruce Wayne was still kind of kicking around as
Yeah.
Batman as well. Um, but you can never really get rid of Batman, as it were. But I think that in that situation, by them trying this different approach, that it could open the door to these characters getting pushed in the present day. Excuse me. But I think you're still stuck in this lane of, it's hard to open up room for these characters to occupy a prominent place in the comic universe. And of course, that transitions into why we do the racial draft, because we know that that structurally certain characters are just positioned to get pushed more than other characters are. And if we know that these characters are going to take up space, it's a little bit unfair for 75%, 80%, whatever the percentage is, to be white characters, when it's kind of easy to say, well, this character doesn't need whiteness in order to exist.
Yeah. I mean that all of that I agree. And I would also go so far as to say that um it's I even though I don't fully agree with some of the detractors, I understand why many black and brown people look at these changes and
Mhm.
feel that skepticism and feel kind of that almost like you're insulting their intelligence because we
What do you mean
see.
exactly? Sorry, just to clarify.
Well, okay, so we see, like you say, Yara Flora, she's becoming Wonder Girl. She kind of set up to be Wonder Woman in the future and things like that.
Hmm.
And that's great, but there's not the guarantee there. So if it isn't a sustained push, if it isn't like you're actually trying to make sure that she has a prominent presence, then after a while, DC, they're known for their crises and their,
Yes.
world shaking up and retcon this and retcon that. So after a while, if we get to this new stage of whatever the next, the next arc is after Infinite Frontier,
Mhm.
and we see, there's a very real possibility that Yarrow Floor is nowhere to be seen.
There is. You're right. On the other hand, one of the things that we've talked about this on other shows, one of the things that does work in terms of getting a character over
Mhm.
is these live action and also animated, but
Yeah,
mostly adaptations that kind of get them to another level of mainstream accessibility and
yeah.
mainstream popularity. I mean, it's this is going to be sort of the counter example
Mhm.
in that they haven't done it, but like take a character as like Cisco Ramon.
Mhm.
Before the Flash television show, I don't think a lot of people were familiar with the character, um, like at all. Whereas now, based on 7 seasons of the Flash, if they wanted to reintroduce Cisco Ramon, aka Vibe, into the comic books, there would be a lot more people interested in the character
Yeah.
um, than before. And knowing that that's an avenue that exists, why wouldn't they take advantage of those kind of things? Why wouldn't they, depending on how this continuous season of Batwoman goes, why wouldn't they introduce, for instance, Ryan Wilder into the
Mhm.
books if there's an audience for her based on the show. And obviously we talked about this in another couple weeks back, that they were thinking about doing a Wonder Girl television show, and that
Mhm.
would only kind of make Yarrow Floor that much more prominent. We know that they are pushing forward with a Naomi show, and
Mhm.
Naomi is in the Justice League. So this is an example of a new character who is has no ties to kind of a previous incarnation. Kind of, she's getting her chance to shine as a new character, and they are doing their part to push her. We'll see if it pans out,
Mhm.
but that's an example of what a lot of people say comic book companies should be doing, which is creating new characters and pushing those new characters. And I'm not opposed to that, but I am skeptical of whether they can do that with a lot of characters at once.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I feel as though, um, it has to sort of be a perfect storm of what ends up being successful, because you have to have, obviously, an interesting character concept, and
Mhm.
arguably there's numerous different interesting characters who haven't gotten their due diligence yet. But you also have to have the willingness to um continue, like, I guess give it your best shot in terms of like the writers and artists and stuff like that on on a comic page. But then, if you want it to be a Naomi type rise to fame or whatever, it has to be sort of that. Um, I don't even know how to describe it. Sort of, I guess, Brian Michael Bendis is somebody who, if he's on multiple titles,
Mhm.
multiple comic book titles, like, say for example, his try with the Wonder Twins. Recently, he was helping with bringing in the Wonder Twins back to comics and stuff, and,
Mhm.
and part of them getting their own little mini series. But
Right.
also, they showed up in like an arc of the Justice League, and also they were part of Young Justice. So you
Right.
get sort of that crossover between multiple comics, so that you have a wider range of like, oh, okay, well, if you're not reading this one, then, well, maybe you'll see them here.
So I
Or
have a
if
quick
you,
I have a quick question about the Wonder Twins, because
mhm.
of the Bendis books that I did read, that was one that I didn't. Are they people of color? Like, I mean, I know they're supposed to be kind of like aliens or whatever, but
they're ambiguously brown. It's never really hinted at like some sort of analogous cultural thing that we would be able to identify. They're just like aliens.
Right, because I mean, as a child, when they appeared in the Super Friends cartoon, I never
Mhm.
thought of them as people of color, but it does seem that recently, they've been illustrated in such a way that they are, like you said, ambiguously brown. I as we joke on this podcast, that would be an example of a racial draft to potentially the multiracial delegation.
Yeah.
Basically the idea that now that they're conceived of as something other than white,
Hmm.
that it was kind of smoothly accelerated from the DC world, that if they're in the future going to be illustrated, they're going to be illustrated as something other than white passing or white identified
Hmm.
characters. And forgive me, I'm forgetting their names. Their alien names. They're obviously not human names, but
Zan and Jaina, yeah.
what were their names?
Zan and Jaina. Hmm.
Zan and Jaina. Yeah. So I mean, to the like I said, you've read the books. Are they presented as ethnic in any kind of way?
Well, they're not.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I feel like, if somebody were inclined to, I feel like they would have an easy avenue to do that. But no, they're not.
Mm,
But as pertains to my previous point, I was trying to say, like, as far as it's just a very interesting combination of elements that sort of helps a character to work.
right.
And it, as much as we would like to see certain characters, like, I mean, it's almost like a crapshoot. You're kind of hoping that they pick your fave, but really it's a matter of who they have faith in as a character, and it's not necessarily somebody who is like, say for example, there's people that are really fervently online and wanting to see Batgirl be the mantle that is held by Cassandra Cain.
Yes.
And Cassandra Cain, I could find, like, I couldn't find a single person who could fault the concept of Cassandra Cain. She is amazing.
Hmm.
She's like one of the premier fighters in DC Comics. And she, her mother is like the deadliest woman or something like
Hmm.
that. She's the daughter of Lady Shiva, and she's trained by Batman and trained by Lady Shiva, and like, she's a very cool character. But
But
in recent years, she's been like treated sort of as a background kind of side character.
right,
And
but I
so,
mean, if I may, part of the problem, it specifically with Cassandra Cain,
mhm,
is that you have a extremely popular character in Barbara Gordon that people don't feel like is necessarily getting her own due.
right.
So I think that this is another factor that comes into play, that often when you have a character that is a legacy character,
Uh-huh.
people aren't prepared to see the predecessor get pushed out of the role.
Yeah.
So it creates a conflict. Like, it's great if you can imagine a world where there are multiple Batgirls, or even you can have, in the case of Barbara Gordon, her evolving into an Oracle, a sort of different conception of Oracle.
I
But
mean, somebody in more well versed in the Bat family than I
mhm,
could obviously go on and on and on about, all of the shortfalls with Batgirl. How, ableism, they didn't want her to, like, stay in the wheelchair forever, and they,
mhm,
it's just a whole lot going on there. But on top of that, they DC, as you have said numerous times, has a very hierarchical system of how they do things. They have sort of a central idea of who are, like, the guys, the people that we, think of as like the premier heroes, and everybody else around them is far more subject to change, far more subject to getting their story retconned or just forgotten
Mm-hmm.
than any other characters. You know all the baseline of Batman, Superman, you know, even to an extent, Wonder Woman has had her story sort of retconned and you know played around with a bit as to whether you know how exactly she came to be and all this other stuff.
Right.
So to I don't know, it's just very frustrating. I could go on a whole tirade about it, but
Sure.
it's a very obvious trend to me that anytime you go for having somebody follow up in a previously established mantle, it is a sort of frustrating skepticism there that, okay, how long do I have this character for?
Yeah. And you know, and again, I think that, you know, we can talk a little bit about the Green Lantern, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
how kind of baked into that character is the idea that there can be multiple Green Lanterns. But even in that, even though one might argue that their success at promoting and sustaining multiple Green Lanterns,
Mm-hmm.
that's still met with resistance. You know, obviously, you know, we're in different chat groups where there are people who push back at the idea that there are so many, you know, earthbound Green Lanterns. But
Yeah.
but the to me, like, why not take advantage of the fact that there can be Green Lanterns of every type out there in the universe? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like we just had a successful run of Far Sector where, you know, Joe Malayan was introduced maybe about a little bit over a year ago. And this is a tremendously interesting character. You know, I believe she's gay. I don't know if she's gay or
Bisexual.
bi.
Bisexual.
Oh, she's bisexual. Okay. You know, so she's, you know, she's a Black woman, she's bisexual. You know, in terms of like how she's illustrated, she's illustrated with kind of Black woman proportions, if you know what I mean. And like a very interesting character that can exist in the realm of the Green Lantern lore without crowding out the space for the other Green Lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and now she's prominent in Jeff Thorne's Green Lantern run. Like, why would anyone want to sort of oppose that? You know, but
Yeah. I mean,
but weirdly enough, it feels like there are people who feel like, oh, there are too many Green Lanterns.
I mean, honestly, it DC has to realize how much space they have to play with. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is sort of my feeling about it. I mean, anybody can be out here and like as a sideline spectator say, oh yeah, they could really do this, that, and the other. But I mean, DC has to understand that. And so if you have, say, for example, these street level vigilante characters, they don't all have to operate in either Gotham or Bloodhaven. Like I
They really
know
don't.
I know for a fact that there are other cities out there that, you know, could have a different dynamic that is not like the very 80-year long legacy built up story of what Gotham is. You can find a
Right.
whole brand new place and allow, say, for example, a wild dog or you know, whoever the person may be, and you know it not necessarily a real existing city or whatever, but you know you can kind of play around with these different elements and you realize that it's not reality. You can make up things, you can you know cause some certain things to exist in the story that makes it unique for why your character is the most effective in that environment.
I mean, we've talked about this before. One of the things that does hamper DC as opposed to Marvel is that they have these fictional cities that
Mm-hmm.
they don't always have a referent in our real world. They
Right.
feel fictional. They feel not of our planet. And Gotham, even though it is a fictional city, they've put the time in and put the work in to make
Mm-hmm.
Gotham feel more real than any other DC city. Even Metropolis, which is, you know, Superman's home, which, you know, when you people know that Metropolis is a DC city, people don't have a true sense of that city beyond Superman.
Right.
And when they try to establish that there are other heroes in Metropolis, it doesn't always pop. You know, it doesn't always
Doesn't
click
always
because,
fit. Yeah.
you know, because people are like, but it's just Metropolis. It's just Superman's city. You know, like for instance, like a character like Black Lightning, you know, Suicide Slum,
hmm
like is supposed to be kind of like the black part of the black part of Metropolis, but we don't really understand that. We don't really like have a sense of what that's supposed to mean, which is why when they did the Black Lightning television show, they didn't
hmm
set it in Metropolis, right? They set it in this whole different city.
Yeah.
And all that does is kind of muddy the waters. It doesn't make this character and his relationship to his home city as organic as it
Right.
would as you do when you get like a Gotham City.
hmm Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
like I think we had talked about this offline, but you know, I said that if we imagined that Metropolis was like Chicago, for instance,
hmm
and and there was kind of a north side and a south side like you get in Chicago,
hmm
where Superman's mostly in the north side, the white part of town, you know,
hmm
and then Black Lightning is in like the black part of town. This is something that someone who lives in Chicago can understand. This is something that kind of loose segregation is something that can actually work to flesh out what Metropolis is. You know,
Yeah, but
it's
I
a
think you could only get that from somebody who uh, who doesn't view the perception of reality as political. Like,
that
I don't really think there's a nicer way to say that. I mean, if you know, there are certain people who are of the mind. You can fill in their demographic, but there are certain people of the mind that comics should be an escape. And
yeah
so, in doing so, you don't have to really acknowledge the reality of demographics and things like that. And you can kind of generalize about, like, you know, when the penguin does this, that, and the other with messing with people's money. Okay, well, you don't want to consider, oh, well, it's going to adversely affect black communities way worse
hmm
than rich white communities. Like, no, you don't really want to say that. You kind of want to be in your fantasy zone of just saying, oh, he's gonna, you know, steal pearls and jewels and stuff. It's like it doesn't always work out that way if you're really trying to um, give something that resonates beyond your usual um, beyond your usual white reader.
yeah. And I think that that's sometimes why certain stories don't click. You know, going back to the overarching thing about race bending, that you know you want to race bend and have the characters' diversity actually deepen and enrich the character. But
Mm-hmm.
if the world that they live in is so bland and you know lacking in flavor, as it were, then then yeah, unfortunately, they may as well be stuck as white people. You know, a fair transition. Obviously, we talked on some earlier episodes about the fact that in the Black Adam movie,
mm-hmm.
they're going to have a Black Hawkman, and you know, in the Justice League books, there's Kendra Saunders, who's a
Mm-hmm.
fairly new character, but you know, especially this new conception of Kendra Saunders. This is a Black woman that is in the Hawk Girl role. Now, granted, there's some pushback between you know Kendra Saunders and Shira Hall, the White Hawk woman. You know, but we can put that to the side. But you know, there really hasn't been a lot of time and energy put into um, fleshing out Kendra Saunders as Hawk Girl, and you know, knowing that there is going to be a Black Hawkman in the movies, you could imagine a world, you know, we talked about this with the whole reincarnation aspect of Hawkman, that it's a little bit off-putting and weird that
Well,
that is
well,
that this
sorry.
reincarnated Egyptian, ancient Egyptian character continues to reincarnate as a white man.
Well, I will kind of push back a teeny
Hmm.
little bit about Hawk Girl.
Okay.
I will say because she's been around since I believe it is 2002. I believe it is around like early 2000s.
Okay.
Okay, so for her character, we get that she is Latina, and
Well,
we
no, I
get
mean,
that,
no. So here's the thing, just to clarify, that is Earth 2 Hawk Girl, Kendra Saunders, who's different from the Earth 1 Hawk Girl,
hmm,
the Justice League.
right. Well, I just mentioned her because
Mhm.
her story is it's troublesome to say the least. Um, her story essentially is that she is the I want to say like the great niece or grand niece or like something like that, but she somehow is descended from a previous incarnation of Hawkman,
Mhm.
and she ends up trying to attempt suicide when she kills herself,
Right.
and somehow her 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 spirit, when her spirit leaves her body, Shayera Thal, the original Hawk woman, her spirit transmigrates into the deceased Kendra Saunders. And so, like, it's a very strange dynamic. They kind of ignore it, and you know, Shayera is in Kendra's body, and they kind of just go with it after a while. Like, she
Right.
starts off, but I mean, yeah. But one interesting thing I wanted to point out, kind of getting away from the ickiness of that, is there's a time when Hawkman and Hawk Girl, Shara Thal, before Kendra becomes Hawk Girl, she's Hawk Girl. So there's a time when they actually are operating in Chicago.
Okay.
I would be very interested in seeing that storyline revive in the now,
Hmm.
because it would be a whole different thing. Like, that the characters are a very different incarnation.
Hmm.
But if you were to have someone now, like say a David Ridley, just putting that out into the universe, if there was someone to perhaps write them in Chicago as the black incarnation that we're inevitably going to get in the movies,
Hmm.
then I think that would be a story worth telling. Like, I mean, DC has to kind of be okay with um, knowing where to kind of uh, toe the line between fantasy and reality and exploit the possibilities that lie therein.
Right. No, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, we've joked about Thanagar as a
Yeah.
black planet. Um, we've joked about Thanagar as a black planet. Somewhere in the universe.
Mhm.
Um, hey, we are joined by TJ Stukes, our boy Stukes, native New Yorker who's now in, I believe, Texas. Um, he's still connecting, but hopefully he'll join us in a second once he fully connects. But yeah, I mean, we've joked about Thanagar being Stukes. Are you with us? Oh, Stukes.
Back and I got 11 left. What's good?
Nice. So just to bring you up to speed, we are talking about the Hawks, the not the Atlanta Hawks, but the Hawkman, Hawk Girl, you know, uh, world of comics, and the fact that obviously there's Kendra Saunders, who's a black woman, and in the Black Adam movie, there's going to be a Black Hawkman played by, why am I forgetting his name?
Aldous Hodge.
Aldous Hodge, thank you. And Randy posited the idea based on earlier comics where the Hawks were based out of Chicago, and how it would be kind of interesting to have, Blackhawks, Chicago Blackhawks. Sorry. But
Like
how
Washington Redskins.
like how interesting it would be to kind of lean into blackness in a blacker city, where where this kind of race bending, particularly when you're talking about these characters that have been reincarnated from, Egypt is still a part of Africa in my book. So, all these previous stories had this reincarnation happen with white characters, but it would be a lot cooler if this, if they leaned into the diversity of having the Hawks as black people in a black city. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Okay, so Hawkman and Hawkgirl, Hawk girl or Hawk woman?
So there's a Hawk girl and there's a Hawk woman, but Hawk girl is the black woman. Sometimes Afro-Latina, depending on the universe. But
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. But like, we'll just say, because I don't think the Earth One Kendra Saunders, I think the Earth One Kendra Saunders is just a black woman. I don't think she's Latina.
So there's a little bit of confusion, and I'm only going to make it worse, but Sheriff was actually Hawk Girl first,
right?
And then she like died for a while, and they brought in Kendra Saunders, who became Hawk Girl. And when Kendra Saunders came in, then they started acknowledging Shayla Thal as Hawk Woman. So that was kind of the mix up there. Sorry.
Right. And Shayera is still around, but she's kind of like out in space, ruling over the Thanagarians.
Okay, so my favorite story, my favorite segment of the story from Hawkman was the Dark Knight's Metal.
Yeah. Okay.
That was my personal favorite.
Okay. So tell the people as well as us a little bit about that storyline quickly.
So that's when they found out the Uru metal, I think.
The nth metal? The nth metal?
Yeah, nth metal, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And as you know, when it's Black Hawkman, the nth metal, you know what what the N stands for.
Fucking MTF.
Sorry. That's a running joke on the podcast that the Black nth metal is white people can't call it by its full name,
But he was having a dream that his wings was always taken away. He was falling to earth, and every time he fell, he woke up, like without his wings, but he was still alive.
Okay.
And he kept on playing it over and over and over again. He couldn't figure it out. And then, he went a different route and got the mace and got his powers back and got that cool ass fucking armor, and when he got the armor, I was like, yo, that is different. Right. And that was like my favorite looking version. Honestly, I don't know too much about their mythos beyond that. But obviously Justice League Unlimited, right. Justice League, but I didn't like how they was portrayed because they looked like clear people.
Yeah.
And they were Egyptian.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like it's an untapped, we've talked about this on other shows, but like, given the fact that Egypt is a part of Africa, not to get all Hotep-y or whatever, but like, we come from kings and queens, like it would open up a huge brand new world of storytelling to talk about the Thanagarians as Africans, as reincarnated Africans. And given that there's all that symbology in the hawk and in the Egypt's tie to kind of hawk reality, that if you have kind of a black connection to Thanagar, and like I said, the nth metal being kind of DC's answer to vibranium.
Mhm.
You could imagine a world in which Black people would kind of relate to the Hawks and relate to Hawkman and Hawkgirl, particularly if you had them kind of establishing their base in a
Mhm.
Black city.
I
Yeah,
just don't like. I did not like how in the cartoon how they
Mhm.
made him the token guy. That token guy.
Mhm.
Hey, always he's always like one of the he's in comic book. I know comic book mythos. He's always one of the most consistent ones, right? With the
Mhm.
fighting, with the power, and they made him seem like he was just an afterthought.
Yeah.
I
Well,
I
hated.
mean, honestly, it's dang, what was I about to say? Okay,
sorry
so
about that.
basically my the thing that I wanted to say here is that I realized that um we're kind of looking at Hawkman with a new lens, but I think honestly it was the first concept of Hawkman was intended to be an archaeologist who he was like it was not really like from the concept of just somebody who was reincarnated from ancient Egypt, because of course back then they kind of tried to insert white people into Egyptian history as well, but
They sure
it was
did.
more yeah it was more so
Yeah.
from like Hawkman as sort of Tomb Raider, like what we would know later on as
Or
being
like
like
Indiana Jones,
right, the guy that we would later on decades later know Indiana Jones, but that was basically his concept. Like he's that guy, and then he after that becomes the warrior power of fantasy. So I would very much like to see a new exploration of that character from
Mhm.
someone who is actually connected to that idea of yes archaeology, but also having the history being there too.
Yeah,
and
and I
and
and I
it,
and the hope is, I mean, obviously we haven't seen the Black Adam movie, but the
right,
hope is that they can bring together those two aspects by having a Black man be an archaeologist. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as I know in pop culture, I can't think of any Black archaeologists in pop culture.
I only know a black a woman that's an archaeologist, just one,
But
and
that's in
that
real life, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I'm saying in terms of like pop culture, like,
Oh, nah.
it's usually white people just digging up in.
we're not usually portrayed in the sciences.
Yeah. So like imagine the idea of Carter Hall as a Black archaeologist going back and, studying the roots of like of sort of his people, and then finding out that he's got this connection
Mm-hmm.
to this ancient race of Thanagarians who,
Mhm.
Thanagar, sorry. Like who have ties to ancient Egypt, and then he gets infused with the power from back then, and he gets connected to this to this ancient civilization that spans in the cosmos,
Yeah,
and
I
and
mean
it brings together like a cosmic and a, again, not to get a Hotepi, but it's like uh ancient Egypt and also space, and it's Black people and brown people
it's a
and
little
African.
heavy.
It's a lot Hotepi, but you know what? I'm here for Hotep Hawkman. Like.
My favorite version of the Hawk Girl
Mhm.
is honestly the Legend of Tomorrow.
Mm. I
I
did
I,
not
I
like I did not like that version because she was always hooking up with white dudes. Um, and the actress herself like was a little bit problematic in that she didn't always acknowledge her status as a woman of color. I'll leave it at that. But I hear you. I hear you. I mean, like, she was Kendra Saunders, and I was rooting for her, just like the meme. We were rooting
yeah.
for you. you know. Um, I think the way that she's portrayed now in the like she's very much like classic Halle Berry right now in
Mhm.
terms of
Mhm.
how she's portrayed in the books. Um, there was a whole thing in, I want to say, Justice League, where Hawk Girl Shiera had a romance with John Stewart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this Hawk Girl has a romance with Martian Manhunter,
Mhm.
fake black man as he is. Um,
Hey, he's close because he's green.
I mean, he could technically be any race.
I mean, when he turns human, he turns into a black man. Apparently,
Yeah.
he's a cultural appropriator. But
No, but I mean,
So you saying he Bruno Mars?
yeah, oh, Bruno Mars. I like it. I'm
Bruno
gonna start using that. He's 24K magic. Bruno Martian Manhunter. Yeah.
if you want to read a quintessential Hawkman,
Mhm.
it's pretty funny that the kind of quintessential Hawkman feeling for me is the most recent run. I believe the writer was Brian Venditti. I have to probably like spell that out,
Mhm.
but you
Yeah, no, I mean, I did like that run, but again, white guy,
I
like,
mean, yeah, because they generally in DC, like I say, they're really terrible with melanin, and that is like an overarching problem for them. But I would say that if you want a Hawkman that is like the least confusing and the least kind of the 90s were not a great time. They were rather edgy back in the 90s. So if you want like the Hawkman action and stuff without going overboard, that is the run to go to.
yeah, no, I mean, I was a fan of the run, but I was just thinking to myself, what a missed opportunity to
Yeah.
race bend the character, because it easily could have ended with brown or black Hawkman,
Mhm.
and because of the reincarnation, like, people would have just accepted it. They would have been like, all
And
right,
and
this
on
is.
top of that, it was right after, I believe, right after death metal. So like that was like
Mhm.
right or like
Yeah, it was.
no, it was after metal. It was before death metal, but it was after metal.
Yeah.
So they would have had a really great opportunity to be like, yeah, we're getting some multiversal changes here going on.
Hmm. And as far as I remember, I don't think Kendra Saunders played a big role in that book, unfortunately.
No, they reconnected Carter with Shayera,
Right.
and that was toward the end of the book actually.
Hmm.
And honestly, like while we're on the subject of the Hawks, we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot in the way of individual development for either Kendra or Shayera in recent years. And I hope that with Black Adam coming out, they keep that in mind, that these characters, you could potentially be banking on these characters too.
Yeah. And again, not to keep coming back to it, but like, it's right there, Thanagar, nth metal, Hotepery, like, just do it. All of a sudden, just flip that switch, and now Black people are interested in the Hawks, and not just because they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Spoiler alert for
Don't remind me,
basketball.
please. Don't remind me. Please don't remind me.
But let's sort of transition away from, let's talk a little bit about Marvel, and Stukes. Hopefully you're gonna be a little bit more involved in the upcoming season of the racial draft. Talk a little bit about characters that you'd like to see from Marvel, kind of reimagined as Black, if you know offhand.
I would absolutely love to see Iron Patriot as it, like, actually having a major role in the next few years. I would love to see who else. All the characters are already Black that I want to see.
Wait, just really jumping in real quick. So when you say Iron Patriot, you're talking about like Rhodey.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yeah.
one thing that
Sorry, I'm
one
sorry.
thing that we
I-
have talked about is that you know, in other respects, we've talked about the idea of in the MCU specifically, race bending Norman Osborn, you know,
Ooh.
and having him be played by Giancarlo Esposito.
Ooh,
Um,
that's a
like,
good one.
yeah,
I mean,
like,
it kind of messed me up after I learned that he was actually not black, that he was actually Italian. I was like, dang, that messed up, that messed up
no, he is
my
no,
black
he's
pride.
black and Italian. No, he's just not Latino because he's played a lot of
Okay,
Latinos. No,
okay,
he's black and Italian. But he's just not Latino, and a lot of people thought he was based on
okay.
other roles that he played. But like, I mean, you know, so I guess technically he'd be multiracial delegation as opposed to black delegation. But you know,
Mhm.
you play around with it. But the idea is that like Norman Osborn, first of all, he has the waves for it, right? So
Exactly.
for like for my entire life,
Did he comb it over? Did he like use a comb and
the green goblin is wearing a wave cap.
Exactly.
So yes, the Green Goblin is wearing some wave caps, like, and he just takes it off, and it's just perfect, you know, perfect waves. I say we stick with it. What's up?
I would like to see Kingpin, full Negro from Harlem.
So so the thing about like I hear you. Like I liked what happened in season 2 where they had where the Latinx delegation
Hmm.
drafted Kingpin because I maybe it's just my own biases, but one thing about Wilson Fisk is that he is able to operate as a crime lord, but also escape scrutiny from the police. And it's so hard to imagine a black crime lord that is always able to skate when it comes to the police trying to like take
Well,
him down.
he might have to be a tad lighter on the black spectrum.
What you
Exactly.
say? What you say? Like mulatto?
I
Yeah, I'm
mean,
saying that like if he's like a little bit
black.
dark skinned, then the society at large just kind of wants to take him down.
He
Gotcha.
could be black. He could just be lighter skinned black and like really good with like I mean because he already doesn't like he already is bald, so it's not like he has to like do anything about his hair. It's just he
What's
Fair,
his name?
right?
What's the name
Wilson
who played
Fisk.
D'Onofrio?
Oh yeah, I mean, and then of course in the Daredevil movie, it was Michael Clark Duncan, which
Mm.
You know
like
what?
I liked. He looked
Physically, I
he
say he perfect.
yeah, but he was a little bit Suge Knighty for me. He was a
Yeah, yeah,
little Suge Knighty
yeah,
for my
yeah. Give me that.
taste. And it didn't work for me. I know it worked for some people, but for
Yeah.
me, it was just kind of like, yeah, but you're Suge Knight, and like you saw what happened with Suge Knight. Like
So should night.
the minute he started like overtly doing stuff, like they sent his ass to jail. Like you know, it
Mhm.
wasn't. It's not like he beat too many charges
Mhm.
as Suge Knight, and that's how I would feel about a dark skinned black kingpin. Like I think that a light skinned black kingpin might be able to, you know, win over some juries.
You know what? Because him being like light skinned, he always had a way with words though.
True.
And I love that about his character. He wasn't just a brute, you know. He was the
No, he was never a
intelligent
brute. Yeah.
and you know, like I think that's what made him scary
Mhm.
because he was intelligent about it. He was tactful about it, but he had that side when he blacked out. You know, he
Yeah.
was the brute. And
Right.
I think that I would like to see I would actually love to see a black vulture too. Like a completely black vulture.
Interesting.
I would like to see that because
Like
uh,
when
um
you so just real quick, like who do you have in mind when you visualize a black vulture?
what is that light skinned guy's name? I would say the Bridgerton guy.
Wait, that pretty? Because the vulture is no, because the vulture is
Listen,
normally like an old dude.
because Vulture he became like that old ugly guy because he was sick in the comics.
Right, but I'm saying normally we think of the Vulture as like an old guy, like not as like a
You know,
young,
why not do
and
something
pretty.
different?
I mean, I hear you. I'm just saying that's a wild, wild departure from
Because
even Michael Keaton as the Vulture seemed a little bit, out of left field.
you think so?
Yeah, because again, normally in the comics, like we think about it, the
He's
animal.
he's an old bald head guy.
Right, no, but I'm saying the animal, the Vulture, is associated with like death, So like having a character that's like old, on the verge of death, like playing the Vulture kind of makes sense,
I would say like make him look sick, like make him look sickly. You can do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But why would you do that? Why would you waste the Bridgertons? Why would you waste that guy and his like super attractiveness by making him?
I would say, okay, like put the scenario in, like,
Okay.
Spider-Man, he does his thing, right? He
Mhm.
doesn't realize that he actually hurts him.
Okay.
Like he puts him in a line of fire or something, but he doesn't realize it. And then when he does realize it, it's too late. He's old, wrinkly, hurt,
Mhm.
frail.
Mhm.
And he wants revenge. He's like, yo, why didn't you help me, fam?
Okay.
So what you're saying is we got to put the pretty boy in his place by making him.
That's what it sounds like to me. That's what it sounds like.
By making him ugly and old and decrepit.
Yo,
Yeah.
that's what actors get paid for to perform, yo.
I mean, and listen, if I was Bridgerton dude's agent, I would not accept that role.
I am 100% here for that level of pettiness.
Listen,
that is
Disney money is Disney money, man.
Listen, that man, we've talked about this before in other shows. That man can make some phone calls and be cast as the Black Clark Kent in the Superman movie. He should take that and run with that, because all the people who say that they don't want a black Superman, if they see Bridgerton dude as Clark Kent, at least the women will be like, all right.
He got to get much bigger for Clark.
I mean, that's what steroids are for. That's what HGH is for. Like they can make that happen. The point is,
you're gonna end up having titties.
Yeah. The point is, all of a sudden, it's like that meme. She'll be like, exactly. She's like, Black Superman. Oh, right. So
what's a I would like to see Rhino also.
Black Rhino. Okay.
Because I'm getting sick of a Russian.
Now, would he
Rhino.
still be Russian? Would he be a Black Russian?
No, he'll be an African.
Oh
Rhino.
shit! Like dude from, I mean, not the same dude who played what's his name? Who played I can't remember his name now. M'Baku. Not the same actor who played M'Baku, but the same body shape.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm trying to remember this actor. Like, he's the same guy who's in Sweet Tooth.
Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, Sweet Tooth, the Netflix show.
Okay. I didn't see that yet.
Don't worry. I'm gonna drop the link into the chat so that you can find this actor. I think like he would be an interesting casting if we're trying to do like African Rhino. Give me a second. Check your chats.
I'm waiting.
The actor is Nunso Anonzi. Yeah. Check your link. Check the chat for the link. The chat window for the link.
Oh, okay, yeah. From Game of Thrones too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Like, I could see that. I could see African. Okay. I could see an African Rhino.
Because so the closest, I'd say this is so crazy, but the closest version of Rhino they got perfect is the PS4 version.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same. I feel like that the Rhino is a character that should be like I mean, because the Amazing Spider-Man movies realized that that he was obviously not going to be in like the rubbery latex Rhino costume,
Mhm.
and I get that, but they could have easily been like, yeah, we're gonna actually put somebody in like some armor
Right.
and make it work as like not, you obviously get that it's practical. All of the armor and all of the kind of suit stuff is not just like, oh hey, look, haha, it's a costume that I look like a rhino. It's like, no, all this stuff serves a purpose.
Hmm.
I hated, what is that, Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like throw that in the, yo,
they put a middle-aged man in a mini rhino Power Ranger Zord, and I'm not sure why they decided to do that.
no, they made a
Listen,
man
they
from
made a
Jersey
lot
play,
of they made a lot of bad choices in
they
that
made a
movie.
man from Jersey play a Russian in a suit.
Right. No, I feel that. I mean, you know what? Like originally, I was a little bit skeptical, but like I could buy like an African actor playing the Rhino as opposed to a Russian actor. Um, like he'd still bring the same pathos and humanity to the role,
I
but
mean,
you know,
rhinos live in Africa.
that is
Like
true.
literally.
That is true.
And I think they should have. I think to this day, I've been thinking this since '99. I've been thinking this forever. They should make Craven South African.
So a white South African, though, right?
I would say a light skin or yes, white South African.
No.
Honestly, I feel the same. I feel like not necessarily that he would have to be South African, but however he would, whatever his ethnicity was, I always felt like Craven and Rhino would be better suited as Black Panther villains than for Spider-Man.
I mean,
Because
so the history, of course, is Craven as a Spider-Man villain, but like I think that I could see him as occupying both roles. So this is a great transition into some of our news stories, right? So I'm going to take the opportunity to do that. Obviously, we know that there is a Craven movie that is to come, and Sony is working on it, and they've cast what's the actor's name? Aaron Taylor Johnson.
from Kick-Ass.
Aaron Taylor Johnson. I believe he's British, right?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Like I think that they should add that aspect. He can listen. I'm stereotyping, but he's a British actor. He can probably do accents. Like they should think of Craven as a South African. I like that. And but the story that was picked up from our friends at the Luminerdi from the past week is that this movie is going to have Chameleon as one of the villains, if not the villain, in the movie. In the comics, it was recently revealed that the Chameleon is Craven's half brother. I think that they would be, they're going to probably position him as an anti-hero, which is, has its own issues. But I like the idea of Craven as a South African. I like the idea of, he's spent enough time in Africa among the animals that
That sounded crazy, yo.
I meant the literal animals.
I know.
Not the racist conception of them, but like, maybe he's got a little tinge of the racism in him. He can't help it because he's South African.
I would say more disgust towards the human race for the animals.
Well, I will say that Black Panther already has a South African villain in Ulysses Claw.
Yeah, but Ulysses Claw is like a different kind of villain,
Right.
Like he's trying to like do the traditional, like steal the resources from the island. I mean, from the land.
Right. But my only I feel as though Craven would be best served if the movie is villain versus villain. I really don't see Craven as like I'm not even sure what role they could conceptualize him feeling in a heroic capacity that, that is even anything recognizable.
Well,
from the
here's how I would see it, right? So I would see Craven, if you're gonna imagine Craven in the most sympathetic and heroic vein possible, is that he's like Stukes said, he has a little bit of disdain for people. So he's kind of almost like a radical environmentalist or a radical animal rights activist.
Right.
He's anti-poaching. He's like, even though he's the hunter, like he's doing it from a position of like preeminent respect for these animals.
Well, no,
And
I get that, but my thing is like, I mean, yes, obviously there's a role that you could like have him in. I'm just saying, as far as what would make him recognizable in like as an adaptation of the comic, I guess is my
right.
my
Well,
thing.
no, but again, what I'm saying is that like unlike a poacher, who would kill animals with sophisticated weaponry and be sort of way too far into the realm of exploiting their technological advantages, he's looking at it as like, no, if you want to hunt animals, you should hunt them on their own terms. You should like do what animals do as a predator and capture them and then take on their aura, so to speak. Like I could see a world where he has a code, and that code is what makes him a heroic or anti-heroic
But the thing is,
character.
with that story, I'll be like, people will be like, well, he's not wrong. Like Thanos, like almost like, damn, he's doing it wrong. He's going about it wrong, but his morals isn't wrong.
Right. That's the advantage of having a code. Like typically, even when a villain is a villain and doing fucked up things, we respect that they have a code. And you can imagine a story where Craven is doing some shitty stuff, but it's like, I mean, but like you said, he's not wrong. And like, if he's going against someone who doesn't have a code, if he's going against people who are like, they'll take every shortcut and they'll do, every other kind of shady thing, then we can have a Craven story where we're rooting for him beyond, like, more than we're rooting for the other people.
Relative to the other villain.
Exactly, relative to the other villain. But then you can still have Craven be like, oh, now I'm gonna hunt Black Panther, and then we're like, oh, whoa. Slow your roll. No.
Because
I mean,
didn't one of his stories, he was like a problem for Spider-Man.
He's always a problem for Spider-Man.
Always.
Like, because he doesn't give off his Spidey sense.
There's a storyline. I forget which storyline it is. So anybody who listens, please feel free to berate me in the comments. But he becomes entwined with Spider-Man in such a way that he cannot. It's like he can only die at the hands of Spider-Man or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's a very interesting sort of dynamic that I would like to see. I mean, I've honestly been kind of on the side of having him be sort of this anti-hero. I don't want them to go too far with it in like giving him necessarily a sympathetic background or something like that. Because I mean, you have, say for example, you have over on DC side, they have Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, who he is absolutely 100% a jerk, and just like he's just that he's the guy that you're supposed to kind of root against.
Right.
There's a sort of charisma about him and a sort of the code and all of that stuff. Even though it is that sort of messed up code, you still kind of appreciate how dynamic and how interesting the character is without necessarily saying, oh, well, he's not actually such a bad guy. It's like, no, he's a bad guy, but he's just really compelling.
Right. So actually, that is a great transition. As part of the Black delegation, how would you feel about a black Slade Wilson?
I love it.
You mean to ask me how would I feel about uh, a black man going by Deathstroke? That's highly entertaining. I am 100% here for that.
I mean, there is an upcoming Deathstroke solo series
Yeah.
that's gonna go right into our scoring period.
I
If
mean,
you wanted to go that route.
I have recently read the Deathstroke solo comics in their entirety, and they have sold me 100% on being a fan of the character. So yes, I will absolutely be considering him in terms of trying to draft him, because I feel like, you know, if anything, DC is really, really in love with their villains. They're
Mhm.
like they love them some villains and some anti-heroes. So I definitely believe that there could be more coming beyond just Deathstroke Inc.
So I gotta ask again, like I asked Stukes, if you were gonna imagine what the Black Deathstroke looked like who do you have in mind?
I mean, it's tough to say. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody.
Okay.
Um, but I will say that the fact that the circumstances of his origin story is
Mhm.
actually very interesting and resonant, in the fact that they told him that he was like he had enlisted into the military, and they told him that they were going to try to test like a truth serum on him, like a
Mhm.
new improved not a truth serum. It's a new improved serum. Let me make sure I get the story right. New improved serum that helps you resist a truth serum, like in case you get caught by an enemy combatant or whatever, so you don't
Mhm.
reveal their secrets. Okay, so he gets injected with this thing, and it like lays him out. It almost leaves him dead. And it
Mm.
turns out to enhance his body and his mind, so that he's like a super soldier. He's basically Captain America with like none of the moral fiber.
Got it. Got it.
And rather than being the stand-up guy Captain America, he becomes a mercenary. So like he's Bucky without any of the like, the kind of sad emo hangups of not wanting to kill people. He's perfectly fine killing folks for the right price.
Interesting. So I'm just gonna throw this idea out there, not to say that this is like should be anyone's first choice, but imagine Terrence Howard as Deathstroke.
I, I'm
Mang,
not saying
Mang.
Playing the guitar like this.
I'm not saying I would go for it, but I would absolutely appreciate the fan art. For anybody out there to do that, yes, by all means, please do that.
Wasn't there a rumor a while back that what's his name, that Idris was going to play Deathstroke, or am I making that up?
That I
I
think
think it
people
was
might
a
have
rumor.
been. I think people might have been speculating just because they didn't know what was happening with the Suicide Squad.
Right,
They
right.
were like, guessing like, oh well, he could be Deathstroke, or he could be Bronze. I personally want him to be Bronze Tiger, but that's neither here nor there.
And he
But
was doing that crazy training.
Okay.
Remember?
yep,
The
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at Idris's Deathstroke either.
no.
Especially because he's right there in the right age group.
hmm
He's got the gray in his beard. We know he's got the kickboxing background.
and
Um,
he absolutely has that kind of growly, gritty charisma. He can make
mhm.
one. Yeah.
Let's make
Yeah.
sure to keep anything named Terror away from him.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the
We're gonna let that
Deathstroke
go.
pedophile.
That's done. That's
Yeah,
canceled. We're done with
yeah,
that.
yeah. Death Kelly is not happening in our universe. Right. That we're getting him right up out the paint.
You got any transitions lined up?
Yeah, let's transition away from that into another news story, which is not exactly in the realm of comics, but it's still once I tell you what the story is, you'll understand. Blackula is being rebooted from MGM, recently sold to Amazon. So maybe we'll see that on Amazon Prime. But Blackula is being rebooted, guys, by MGM, Braun, and the Hidden Empire film group. I assume you guys have both seen the original Blackula from the 1973.
I
Yeah.
have. I have
You have
not.
not?
I need to watch them because I've heard that they're entertaining, but I have not.
Well, just to bring, 1972 was the original, and then there was a sequel in 1973. But the basic plot line is that Blackula was an African prince who was trying to get Dracula to fight against slavery. But wouldn't you be shocked to find out that Dracula was racist? Yeah, so racist Dracula says, "No, I'm not going to help you with slavery. In fact, I'm going to turn you into a vampire." In the purest of disrespect. And then he locks him in the coffin, and then 100 years later comes up out of the coffin. He's like, "I'm a vampire and I'm black and I'm doing my thing." And I think that there's some legs, some potential.
Okay,
You know
first
what's
of all,
crazy?
that makes me mad. All right, now he's not even like, I could see if it was like Blackula is like, actually we're reimagining Dracula, where the original Dracula is a black man. Like, they don't even have the respect to let the man be the Dracula. Like, no, you're the black version of Dracula.
Yeah, no. In fact, I think Dracula, in again, more disrespect, he's like, "Yes, I'm going to call you Blackula because I like portmanteaus." He's like,
There was the craziest thing about that story. So, the way he came into the modern day, he was the estate was purchased by two gay interior designers.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, look, I think that there's a lot of room to reimagine Blackula
I hope so.
in the current era. I can't think of who I would want to cast as Blackula.
Oh, no black person I respect.
What did you say?
I said no black person I respect. That's who I would not.
Oh, I mean, I
You know
think
what? You got to get that guy from Reno 911.
I will say the only way that I will genuinely like kind of like put respect on Blackula's name is if part of the story is his quest to like take down Dracula for like, disrespecting him. I could be okay with that. If he was like, and they don't actually call him Blackula in the movie, or like they do it in kind of a derisive way, and like anybody who calls him Blackula, like he just gets them or something like that. It couldn't just be like that you just play straight up, "Oh yeah, I'm fine with being called Blackula, and I'm just, going about my normal vampire duties." Like, no, that's stupid. You have to put some kind of twist on it to make it more compelling.
I mean, so here's what I was thinking. What I was thinking is that he's like extra militant, like he's he's mad at what happened to him. And he's like, "Yeah, wait, so while I was asleep in this coffin, black people came back and they, and they got rights. Like, I'm here for this." So he's
now I'm woke.
Right. It's
and
like,
I'm going to build my army of undead, immortal Hotep Negroes.
Exact. Now you're getting it. Now you're getting a Hotep Dracula, like black and
check the chat.
Cedric Yarbrough. I'm not familiar with his work.
No,
I'm not.
he's hilarious. He has a lot
Hmm.
of varied work.
Like I feel
but
like he would play like Renfield. You know what I mean? Like he would
Hmm.
play like the guy who's trying to like uh suggest that Blackula like be about his people, you know? Like
Hmm.
I'm thinking like in my mind, I'm thinking of someone like who's the guy
I
who played
mean,
Luke Cage?
Coleman Domingo. Let it be Coleman
No,
Domingo.
look. Listen, I'm a huge Coleman Domingo fan. Like, you can't cast Coleman Domingo as Blackula and not have him win. Like, you know.
Right. That is the only way I will be satisfied. If you kill Blackula, first of all, you already had the disrespect of calling him Blackula in the first place, and then have him lose after he already got disrespected by Dracula and turned into one of the undead. No, he has to win. Like this has to be the version of like Vampire in Brooklyn where
You know
everybody's
what?
matched up.
Look, Coleman Domingo as Blackula, like I'm there on day one. Like he has got too much swag. Like he's got the drip in like all his outfits. He shows up in every situation with the cape and with yeah. Like look, like he's like pansexual, you know, like he's hooking up with men, he's hooking up with women, like yeah, all right, fine. Coleman Domingo as Blackula. You heard it here on the Racial Draft Podcast. That's probably going to be the title of the episode. Holler at us because we just made your movie $800 million. Yeah, all right, fine, you got it, Randy. That's ideal casting.
You are welcome.
What else is happening? In the comic world, there is a new writer for the Ms. Marvel comic. First South Asian writer to write Ms. Marvel. Samira Ahmed will be writing Ms. Marvel as of, I believe, September. Yes. There's a new Ms. Marvel miniseries. And it will be 5 issues, and there's a rumor that it's going to kind of reinvent her origin, because as you know, now that Disney controls the mutants, the Inhumans have not been kind of missing in
They've not
action.
been.
What do you say?
That's gonna happen.
I said they've not been.
Yeah,
at all.
so you know, it's a possibility that they're going to retcon Ms. Marvel as not an Inhuman just to get them out the paint.
A mutant, maybe. I'm just saying. Like,
I don't think they're going to make her a mutant. I think they're going to give her some other kind of different powers tied to some like Kree technology, especially because, you know, there's that Marvel's movie in the MCU where she's going to be connected to Carol Danvers and what's her name, and Monica Rambeau. sorry, I apologize. I mean, I think they're going to find a way to transition her away from the Inhumans. Yeah, you know, they're.
Do you think that's in the MCU specifically? Do you think that's dead?
Inhumans?
Inhumans.
Yeah, I don't think we will hear the words Inhumans in the MCU again. Ever. Yeah, I think that's done. I think that you know, the TVA showed up and they let loose the Inhumans bomb or whatever. then they were like, yeah, that's done. No, again, actually, to be fair, I mean, it's possible that we'll see Black Bolt and Medusa or whatever way down the line.
Because I like their dynamic, Medusa and Black Bolt. You know, I like their dynamic.
I do, but I think that, you know, like we've talked about this before, maybe not on the show, but there's not enough room in the story, in the overall story, for both Inhumans and mutants.
Well, I kind of sort of push back on that, but only if they try to have them both be earthbound species.
Cinematose.
If they try to keep them both as like living on Earth, then I could see your point to say that Inhumans and mutants don't really get to coexist.
Yeah.
But I believe that it's possible. I hope.
Well, here's the thing. Yes, I agree. I think that it is possible. I just think that the mutants, and the X-Men and all of that stuff is so much more marketable and interesting
Yeah.
that if you're asking yourself, like, are you going to make this character a mutant or are you going to make this character inhuman? Like 10 times out of 10, they're going to pick mutants.
Well, yeah. But the only thing that I feel is that Marvel made a mistake with trying to I don't know. There's a lot going on with the Inhumans that I would retcon personally. Yes. And I feel like you have to kind of address that before you try to bring them to the big screen. So in the meantime, you have say I want to say like they're going to bring the Fantastic Four to
the big screen,
right? And so in that time, you kind of get a bit of in that space, you have room to kind of visit on those characters without trying to immediately jump into, hey, look, we're bringing back the Inhumans. Like, no, you don't have to do that right away. Especially after Scott Buck just dragged my babies for filth. I really love the characters, and he just wow. So, you can kind of take a little bit of time just because it was on TV, thank goodness, and it's not really like something that touched on other movies or other movies acknowledged the Inhumans fiasco. So you can kind of address it, but I definitely believe that they need to take time away and kind of reassess the concept of who the race is and the relation of the royal family, like how they can kind of fit into the greater scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
right?
And but the Marvel Universe itself too. So,
but the thing about it is that like there's the Inhuman royal family, which is it's one thing, and then there's the what they did in the comics, which is the Terrigen bomb and creating all these new Inhumans. Like I don't think there's a lot of room for that second part.
Right.
I
mean they
go on, Stukes.
Sorry.
But like the thing that I'm thinking how they can include them, they never explored what was on the moon ever. They never talked. Right. They just talked about space out there. They never said, "Hey, like there's something underneath our nose we never knew." Like, and they didn't want to be known.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they're a secret society of Inhumans is a different story than what we were talking about with like Kamala Khan and other characters where their powers just emerged and then the Inhumans showed up to be like, hey, you're part of our race, like I think that story is probably dead. Like I think that they're not really going to explore that. Even if they do like
with Vin Diesel becoming Black Bolt.
There was a little bit of storyline in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I know we kind of have, come to the conclusion that they're not canon, but if Marvel Studios wanted to take that little bit of storyline, they actually had like some of the Terrigen got into like it was some kind of chemical production thing that ended up being like
it was like fish. It was like fish oil products
kind of supplement thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, they could find another way that the Inhumans are introduced that is not quite. It's not quite mutant. Like where you have.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if you like the money is in the mutants. Like let's not mince words here. Like mutants, X-Men. Like whenever they decide to introduce that concept, it's like $1 billion idea,
let's be real.
Let's not muddy the waters with Inhumans.
The X-Men movies did not age well.
The original, yeah. No, I agree.
But still,
None of them have aged well.
that shit didn't. I looked at this shit the other day. I was like, yo, this is bad, yo.
Mhm.
I was
But
like,
that's what I'm saying. When Marvel decides that they're going to do their X-Men movie,
Yeah.
like that's $1 billion, right?
Headed,
So
the fandom is gonna dive head first.
yeah. So
Like,
why
no-
fuck around? Why fuck around with the Inhumans if you don't have to?
I genuinely believe that if they do happen, they're going to be fully, completely in outer space. That is my only feeling about it. I don't think that the Inhumans are completely done, but definitely the Earthbound, like,
Yeah.
nah, they're not gonna do that.
Exactly.
Definitely agree with that. Definitely agree
Yeah.
with that.
And honestly they shouldn't. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we think about the top Inhumans characters, Kamala Khan is one, Moon Girl is probably number two.
Well, she has a cartoon coming up, I believe.
Yeah, so I think that they'll probably retcon her origin as well. They'll make her something other than an Inhuman, and it'll be Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and that'll be her own thing. So that they'll just to eliminate the connections to the Inhumans, because, like you said, Inhumans in space has some kind of marketability, but
Mhm.
Inhumans as some kind of secondary race to the mutants, not nearly as marketable.
Yeah.
So my question is to you two, right?
Mhm.
How are these future Inhumans get their powers?
No, here's the thing. They're still going to have like Terrigen mists and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
but I think I think it'll be similar to how it was before they did that big Inhuman push, where they'll have their ritual
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
they get in, where there's a Terrigen infusion and they get their powers that way. I think
Yeah.
I think it'll be sort of like a religious thing.
Do you think the snap will have anything? Because the snap is going to obviously play a long-term game. You know what I mean?
Actually, I disagree. I mean, we kind of talked about this on the variant cast. Plug for the variant cast. You should listen to it, listeners. But I think that in the aftermath of whatever the next phase is, where we go to the multiversal war, and whether you want to call it Secret Wars or whatever you want to call it, I think that at the end of that storyline, there's going to be a kind of resetting of the universe. And I think that once that resetting kicks in, that's where we'll get our mutant story. I don't think
Mhm.
it'll be like explained. I don't think they're gonna say this thing caused the mutants. I think we'll just accept, because we know that we all love the mutants, that
Mhm.
when the universe gets rebuilt, when the timeline gets rebuilt, it will be a new timeline that incorporates the history of the mutants. So I think that I don't think the snap's going to cause anything, as much as people will just continue to reference the 5 years, between Thanos' snap and the present day.
Yeah, I mean they're not gonna like continually reference the snap forever. Eventually, you're gonna have to kind of move beyond
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would love
But-
to see the mutants, like, not being funny, just shoved into the MCU.
Well, that's what I'm
Like-
saying. Like, I think that what they're going to do, like I said, not in the next 3 to 5 years,
Right.
because I do think that they can do Secret Wars or whatever they want to call it. I think they can do Secret Wars without involving the mutants at all. I think that that's probably the smartest. Like I said before, the Fantastic Four makes a lot more sense for Secret Wars than the mutants.
Mhm.
Because they jump. They explore. They go to different universes. They travel in time and space. So you could easily have the Reed Richards, the Council of Reeds, the Fantastic Four and all their shenanigans be part of the multiversal storytelling, and give them that push in that respect. But then when it's all said and done, when that storyline is over and they reboot the universe, not reboot the universe, but reset the universe, then all of a sudden they can say, oh wow, this new universe that's been created has mutants in it.
Mm.
And people will be like, yeah, all right, fine. We're ready. We want the X-Men. We want to see these characters, and we're ready to accept, like, they've already created a new timeline, and people won't say to themselves, well, why weren't the X-Men in the original timeline? You know what I mean? Like, they'll
I
just be
was
like,
I was
in this timeline, there's mutants now.
I was gonna try to make like a Star Brand joke because you said new universe, but I didn't want to go like too far off in left field.
I mean, I think, like I said, I think that's the direction that we'll go, because you could tell 10 years worth of stories just with the mutants.
Yeah.
Fact.
Like, you don't have to go do Iron Man, you don't have to do Captain America, you can just do mutants for 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's the route they're going to go, but I think that we know that there's like various young Avengers coming. I think that they want to tell those stories. I think they want to have all these characters get their sequels and their trilogies. So I mean, it's 2021 now. I feel like 2025, 2026 is probably when they kind of reset things.
Okay.
And then in 2026, people will be ready for like a new slew of actors playing those roles.
And Lord knows we need to move beyond the conversation of Fox X-Men movies. Yes.
Exactly. And then that's what I could see. I could see in like 2025, they're like, X-Men finally coming, right?
Mhm.
And we start telling X-Men stories, and then they start weaving the other Marvel characters into those stories. But
I'm just really upset that it took them so long.
I mean,
Because
I get why they're taking so long. I can kind of empathize just because Fox is like on some other foolishness. They were like
they
Yeah.
were
not
so
interested.
stubborn.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
they were not interested at all in any kind of cooperation like Sony was. They were like, nah, we're doing it ourselves.
and the thing about it is, they had limited success, right? Fox did.
I mean, they really like they didn't want to cooperate because there was no real reason to. Like, as
Yeah.
long as you literally they took the most cynical possible path. Is like, if you smack an X on it, then they will come.
Mhm.
That was it.
Yeah.
I think it
And
was the characters was a sell, not the movie.
right. And what's sad is that, between X-Men Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, and New Mutants,
Mm.
they really did damage to the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, they did, but at the same time, I want to say that it is so. I don't know. It's the damage. Yes, I'm frustrated, but I don't know. I kind of have bittersweet feelings about it. Like, you kind of wanted to see them do better, even
Yeah, of
though
course.
even though I wanted to have Marvel, get all of their babies back under their one roof and everybody be all together and interact and stuff. I was kind of like, dang, I wish these movies were better. I wish these X-Men movies were better. Like,
Oh
I
yeah, for
wish.
sure. But the point is, they didn't do it, right? And I can understand why Marvel would say, wow, yeah, these movies were not good, so we can't just bring those characters into our universe.
You're right.
As popular as Hugh Jackman was as Wolverine, you just can't like bring him in, because
He was
you're
one of
you
the
got to
only
bring in
highlights.
all the other characters.
He was one of the only highlights of those movies.
Literally.
Yeah, but if I'm Marvel, I just say like Hugh Jackman, you did your thing, but like we can't bring in the rest of the trash like just to get you.
Mhm. I would like to see, um like, I still think, I know I've been called crazy about this. I still think that the weapon the weapon
Weapon
experiment
X.
was going on in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Not like
Well,
going
so
on.
that's the thing. Like, I think that it is definitely possible to introduce just Wolverine
Hmm.
Mhm.
within the margins of the MCU if they wanted to go that route.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a certain amount of restraint that Marvel could use in
Mhm.
that they know that in a lot of people's minds, Hugh Jackman is the definitive Wolverine,
Yeah.
um, and that they want to make $1 billion on Wolverine,
Yeah.
right?
Honestly,
And
my thought
mhm,
is that it is going to be piecemeal at first. I really do. I feel like it's going to be like, oh, Peter Parker meets Kitty Pride, or like Wolverine shows up in the thing. Like it's gonna be
yeah,
little by little, and then finally, ta-da! They show up, and at the end of the movie, it's like this character will appear again in X-Men or whatever the
right.
movie's gonna be.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think that like I said, I think that once they're done with their multiversal storytelling, then it's just all bets are off. Like, I think that the door will be smashed wide open
Huh?
and in this new universe, and it'll be basically like, yeah, mutants are a thing, you
Because
know.
remember, it's not just movies no more.
What is
Right?
yeah,
It's TV
like
shows.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that there'll be an X-Men Disney Plus series which will talk about like the history of mutants
Mm.
in the Marvel cinematic in whatever 2. That yeah, MCU 2.0, let's call it that. Like, this is
Hashtag
what we're gonna talk about.
YouTube.
Yeah, MCU 2.0 after the Secret Wars is going to have mutants
Oh, we definitely
embedded.
will be having multiple mutant shows.
Yeah.
there
So
will be
so
more
I
than one.
think that so that's what I'm saying. So I think that MCU 2.0 will have an X-Men show which will explain the history of the mutants, but then
Mhm.
there will also be both an X-Men movie and a Wolverine movie that will both be earmarked for $1 billion. Um, and I think that's their thought process, that once a few years have passed, once all the other stories have been told in terms of the timeline and the multiverse and things getting all muddled up, when they reset that and they get into MCU 2.0, people will be like, yes, X-Men are here, Wolverine is here, mutants, we're open for it, open for
Mhm.
business. And the thing is, transitioning into our sort of like racial draft thinking, you know, this is a pet topic for me. Like, I think that what needs to happen with the mutants is that the mutants have to be more diverse in the movies than they
Uh-huh.
are in the comics,
And
because
it really should be more diverse in the
yeah,
comic.
like, no, because in all seriousness, like, I believe that the concept of the mutants as like as a hated and feared, that thing that happens with the mutants, I
Mhm.
think it makes a hell of a lot more sense if the mutants are mostly people of color.
Mm.
Mostly
Because
either people of color or somewhere on the LGBTQ
no,
spectrum.
I mean, that too, correct, but mostly people of color, because let's face it, we're black. We know that if black people had superpowers, people wouldn't be happy about that.
Gotta be some black people, some brown people, some
Exactly. Like,
disabled
that explains a hell
people.
of a lot about why mutants are hunted and sent to camps and all
some
those other things, because
some
it's like, if look, I'm sorry to the white listeners, whatever, but like, if white people got superpowers, they'd find a way to be like, that's cool, that's awesome. You know, if white people got superpowers tomorrow, society would be in favor of it in a way that they
I'm
wouldn't
not
be in favor of
that
it.
at all. That is reality.
Yeah,
That is the real. But I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to have some more X-Men who are black, who are brown, who are disabled, who are plus size, who are not human passing.
yeah,
Like we had
right.
whole alien
Because
infrared.
right, because you know, I've made this point before. The argument for why society would be distrustful of
Mhm.
mutants is that they're people who don't deserve their powers,
Yeah.
you know? And who doesn't deserve their powers but people of color, right? Like when someone like Iron Man creates a suit, when someone like Captain Marvel gets powers, when someone like Peter Parker gets bit by a radioactive spider, these are still white people. Captain America, Super Soldier, like when white people get superpowers, people see that and they're like, yeah, you know, I mean, you know, that's
We got white people in real life. They're frustrated, very bothered, very unhappy with Black
yeah,
Panther.
right.
They're
Like,
very not
like
amused
what?
with Black Panther.
They're mad because Black Panther is black in Africa.
Exactly. But like if you know, if all across the world there were all these brown people and black people and just generally non-white people getting superpowers, yes, that's definitely a reason for the government to say we need to figure this problem out. We need to, you know, put these people, surveil these people. We need to
Mhm.
figure out how to take their powers away. You know what I mean? Like it's a natural story to have the government be distrustful of the next stage of human
In
evolution.
in
You
in
know,
this in this conversation, I'm kind of interweaving it with the movies, but sort of interweaving it with the comics
Mhm.
as well. I would be very interested if they modernized the Sentinel concept from
Mhm.
being like these huge giant robots to almost like the Americops from the Captain America recent series,
Mhm.
like where they actually would be just like regular human-sized robots, but they are like scary destruction machines. I would be very
Well,
interested.
so what I was thinking is something comparable to like the Nimrods, you know, where they're like human sized, but then they
Mhm.
could become the giant robots,
Right, right.
you know, if necessary. You
Hmm.
know, I think that that would be an even more scary concept where, you know, they can be the giant robot or they can be the regular size like person that could live amongst, not live amongst, you know, but like you said, like the Americops.
Right.
um they're just kind of working through the cities or working through you know, these communities, and then
I feel like if they streamline those ideas, it could be
mhm,
really compelling. Like, I mean,
yeah,
because I realize that there's like different, you know, because Captain America has its own antagonists and X-Men has
sure,
their own. But if they kind of let that be an overarching technology that existed in Marvel Universe, that would be really something that could, you know, be more resonant. I put
yeah.
it that way.
I mean, basically, like, so based on what you said, and I sort of agree with you, it could be an idea where they adapt to what they think the threat is,
Hmm.
right? So when they're taking out like one mutant, they're just, you know, human sized.
Hmm.
But if they show up in a place that has multiple mutants, then they grow to the size that they need to grow to
Yeah.
take out 5 mutants or 10 mutants or 20 mutants or
Right.
whatever. Like basically, once they detect um, mutants, they grow to meet the threat. So if they
Mm.
show up at the X-Men Academy where there are 25 mutants, now they're a giant robot, you
Right.
know. The sentinel, yeah, so the sentinels are adaptable in that respect.
Mm.
And you know, and I think that that would be, yeah, a scarier concept, that they're hunters, they're hunting mutants, but then they grow to become this monstrous force to
Mhm.
take out a whole area where mutants happen to be, as opposed to they're just giant all the time.
Right.
And I think that as viewers, we would probably be a little desensitized to that, if they're just giant robots just hanging out,
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, I personally think that the way to really make the concept of mutants pop is by saying that these are marginalized people with superpowers.
Mhm.
However, they're marginalized, but they're marginalized people. They're not in the dominant hegemonic group.
Right.
And that's a big part of why they like the powers that be want to eradicate them.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense anyway, just because there's always been kind of that story, um that they've always kind of tried to draw that parallel anyway, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people have that false notion of like, oh, Professor X and Martin Luther King and Malcolm
Right.
X, Magneto. So I mean, they kind of want that idea of a racial or ethnic marginalization anyway. So I mean, I figure it's a pretty easy line to draw between those two.
Yeah. So I gotta ask. I mean, again, black delegation. I have my own characters in mind, but if you were thinking about race bending, prominent mutants, like who would be your top three mutants that you would race bend to black?
Well, assuming that I keep Storm,
Oh
then
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah. I mean, Storm stay black. Right. I'm
I
saying
yeah,
characters that
Storm.
you would change to black.
But as far as who I would change, Beast, he comes to mind, and I mean, it's crazy because I usually don't like to think of black characters in those kind of animalistic terms,
Hmm.
especially in a physical aspect. But it does occur to me that he reminds me of some unfortunate black fellows who
I
perhaps
mean,
are not proud of their
say it.
physical presentation.
Say it. Hank McCoy's a coon. Hank Hank
I mean,
McCoon. Hank McCoon. Just say it. Just say it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, he would be the kind of guy who's like, who kind of internalized the hatred
Sure.
and feels like, they have a right to feel like we are monsters. They have a right to
Hmm.
and all that stuff. Even though I mean, obviously, I don't think it comes from a place of malice, but it
No, it
feels,
doesn't. But it's an internalized self hatred. Yeah.
yeah. And
And
I
I think
feel
it
like,
makes him a more interesting. Honestly, I think it makes Hank McCoy a more interesting character if he is a black man.
yeah.
And
And I mean,
he
everybody
accepts
already,
the role of beast.
yeah.
Like I think it makes him a more compelling character.
And there's already somebody that is vying for the role. So I would be fine if he ended up getting that audition.
Hmm.
Um, and then after him, I would say I I don't know how, for some reason, the idea of either Iceman or Cyclops or both
Hmm.
being like biracial or like light skinned black guys, I
Hmm.
feel like that could be it could lend to some very interesting storytelling.
I mean, I definitely think Cyclops, because of the whole like the way he carries himself,
Hmm.
seems like someone who has been told that he has to be twice as good.
Yeah.
Um, so I could definitely buy Scott Summers, feeling like he has to overcompensate as
Hmm.
both a mutant and as a black man.
And
Um,
the only reason why Iceman comes to mind for me is
mhm,
because I could kind of envision this story where he is not himself white, but he was adopted by white parents who believe that they're adopting this person of color
mhm,
kind of absolves them from sort of other feelings of bigotry that they have. And it would be very interesting. I mean, obviously, we're not going to get like a whole Iceman movie or whatever, but to have sort of that nuance to his character, you can kind of see how he plays away his internal insecurities and stuff like that by kind of being a jokester, being kind of the class clown or whatever. And over time, you get this arc of he kind of comes to terms with being gay, and he comes to terms with being confident in his growing powers. And so it could be a really great arc for sort of that learning to accept and embrace who you are without necessarily being quite so heavy-handed about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing that came up in one of the in the last season, season 2, is the idea of Logan as a black man, or given the time frame and the idea of black people being experimented on. I think that I could totally see Logan as a runaway slave that was put into the Weapon X program because they didn't respect his humanity.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he has that extensive history in the military, and there's a huge tradition of black men in the military. Like I could see a black Wolverine, and of course that would lead to a black Laura Kinney as well. That I could see that in the realm. Obviously, I don't have a casting in mind for that, but I think that's a possibility as well. But there are probably other races that could also make a stake a claim to Logan Wolverine.
I mean, we recently got the news came out up in Canada of those
the First Nations
quote unquote schools
mm-hmm.
that were set up, and they're finding mass grave sites of those poor indigenous children.
Right.
And yeah, I feel like that there's a lot of stories that could be explored if they are okay with acknowledging the fact that race is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are ways to do that without being overly heavy-handed. Let people kind of come in and contribute to telling those stories without we know how to tell the stories. We don't need like folks to come in who are white and like, I've done the research. Like, no, we know the story. We don't have to do the research. We know the lived reality of what that looks like. So our portrayal of encountering a white person who is kind of racist, it looks more like a John Walker in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as opposed to it's not always some backwoods guy in a mask or a hood or something like that. It's not always that cartoonishly excessive.
Mm-hmm.
So you want somebody who knows those cultural nuances, and to really get people talking. What he said, was it really racist? Like, no, it was really racist.
Right.
But you want that.
No, I feel that. Obviously, we've talked about this before, but Apocalypse, as a purely African Apocalypse, I think that there's a lot of room to explore him. There aren't a lot of, a lot of people have talked about the idea of Magneto being race bent to black, but I do think that his character does benefit from having been part of the Holocaust. So, even if you're going to talk about his relationship to oppression, it's going to be through the lens of the Holocaust more so than through the lens of slavery per se.
I mean, honestly, if he is a black man or black, he probably was a child back then, but a black child back during the Holocaust times, I think he would have been more likely to survive slavery days than the Holocaust. Had he been a black person in the Holocaust, I don't think he would have survived. I think there's
Yeah.
a totally different conversation that would have been had there
Mhm.
because oh, there was, when people, I don't know, it's just it was a very different dynamic that you didn't like. We don't really know about a whole heck of a lot of black and brown German people or people living in Germany. So I figure there's a reason for why that is, and I don't
Yeah.
think that's pleasant.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's room. Well, sorry, I say unfortunately, but I mean fortunately. There's room for uh, X-Men mythos to
Hmm.
introduce a new character
Yeah.
that existed in the time of slavery, because it's another kind of oppression. It's another environment in which being a mutant would have served someone's benefit,
Yeah.
and having a character whose life experience was shaped by that experience would um, make that character probably particularly popular as an
Yeah.
anti-hero, if not a, you know, depending on how they play it, they want to make him an anti-hero or a villain, that who we understand where they're coming from, kind of like King Killmonger,
Hmm.
um I think that's a missing piece of the in the comics, but also in live action, uh having a character whose experience is shaped by that kind of experience and is in the modern era, who they can basically say, yeah, none of that is new. I've been fighting against this kind of oppression for my entire life, and I'm a mutant, but I'm also a black man or a black woman,
Hmm.
as it were.
Yeah.
I think that there's room for someone to create a character that can be intersectional in that respect. And I'm
Hmm.
hoping I'm hoping that someone does it. I mean, that's a little bit outside of our purview in the racial drafts, but because I can't think of anyone offhand in the X-Men mythos who could be tweaked in that respect.
Honestly, I don't think that one exists. If they do exist, it's not somebody who um has had any sort of like prominent capacity because I definitely can't think of them right
Yeah, me neither. But listen, if someone creates that character, we will definitely talk about it and tout it on the show, because even though we talk about the racial draft here, we just talk about in general, opportunities to expand the palette of diverse characters, and diversity overall in the comic book world, in the
now.
superhero realm. So oh, if you're a Marvel creator and you happen to be listening to this show, thank you. But hopefully you take our discussion to heart, and you make that move. um I guess I will This is a weird transition into the final story that we had, because it's not necessarily germane, but it involves the Silk series. um there's a Tom Spezialy. He worked on the Watchmen series, which is, we all love here and we critically acclaimed.
Hmm.
He is going to be one of the showrunners of the Silk series with Amazon Studios. He signed an overall deal with Amazon, and he's going to help bring that show into reality. Are you reading the Silk series, Randy?
I recently did a binge read and right on time to catch up with the new one. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's a character that I'm hoping is truly done justice in live action, and I still hope that they find a way to introduce her in the Spider-Verse sequel, which you know there's some different rumors swirling around about that.
Yeah.
Um, Big fan of how, listen, I'm a Spider-Man guy, but I like the way that they've been able to interject um, diverse spiders, and Silk is one of my favorites. Cindy Moon.
Hmm.
Um, I think that great stuff is being done in that solo series, and I hope that great stuff continues to be done in this series. I'm trying to remember the main writer that is working on that, Lauren Moon. So Moon to Moon, that is cool. So don't know when the series is going to drop, but we'll keep you posted. And yeah, other than that, do you have any sort of final thoughts about what we're aiming towards in season 3?
I want to get better at kind of just spotting, uh I guess not just potential for areas, because I a lot of my conversation in the nerd space is
Mm-hmm.
like my kind of hope for where characters can fit,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of want to align my spidey sense, as it were, with like how things kind of are, and so
Right.
being able to sort of see that, I guess, in terms of like gauging what characters I want to draft, and looking outside of not even just not just characters that I personally like, but characters that maybe I might be open to learning more about, or
Okay.
characters, because I honestly I'm not a bat person, and that cost me from I could have drafted um Jace Fox for
Mm-hmm.
this previous season. So that, I don't want to overlook something just because it on the
Or even Luke Fox, let's
right, and just on the surface, I don't want to feel like, okay, I'm kind of shying away from something just because it's not immediately already my interest.
right.
And that not only did that keep me from, at your recommendation, I ended up going back and like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read, I'm gonna give this next Batman a try, and it turned out to be something that I really enjoy. And so, I want to kind of open my horizons, and um feel out other people's experiences so that I can be more well-rounded in who I assess as like somebody worth drafting.
Yeah, I mean, what I like to think about is, I try to think about it from kind of a, you know, I always strip away the layer of default whiteness
Hmm.
from these characters, and I say to myself, like, if this character weren't white, who, like, what would this character be, based
Yeah.
on the personality, based on the storylines, and then that's often my guiding principle. um and then I think about like how this character is being used, and that's the sort of the next stage for me.
Hmm.
So, in terms of, everyone gets 12 picks, um or 12 choices, and then of course there's a supplemental draft where we're still going to do that in season 3. So, um there's a lot of flexibility in terms of having the representation that every delegation is looking for, but
Hmm.
also the strategic aspect of who are the most prominent characters, and who would, like, you know not necessarily overarching about points per se, FCL scoring points, but the points being a proxy for how prominent these characters are.
Right.
So clearly, we know that the bat world is always going to be well represented. Less so for the Superman and I mean, unless you're talking about actual Superman and the Wonder Woman world, those are sort of like a additional tier below the bat world.
Hmm.
And then in Marvel, one thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot more parity
Yeah.
in the Marvel. Um, Other than specifically Peter Parker, most of the characters are sort of well represented, um, to the extent that not too many characters are head and shoulders beyond the others.
Hmm. Yeah.
So given the difference in strategy with this new season, with the bidding, take that into account. Don't maybe overspend on the Marvel characters, because there's another Marvel character another Marvel character that might be just as prominent.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm really looking forward to seeing how things play out in this upcoming season. Obviously, I've got a little bit of work to do in the realm of trying to get more voices on the podcast. Thank you. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm not happy that you're here, obviously, but it's listen, if you're a listener and you'd like an opportunity to come on the podcast and talk about your take, particularly if you're from one of the underrepresented delegations, hit me up, MTFIII or the Racial Draft Pod on Twitter. Listen, we're trying to widen the realm of the discussion and represent these different demographics and keep the conversation flowing. Randy, you can be found where?
I am on Twitter at Randy S0725. You can use my hashtag superpower list or SPL. And I guess my little addendum here would be that, I like being on the show as somebody giving my perspective, but I would really love someone to contribute who has a bit more comic knowledge than I do.
Okay.
I have, I've been reading recently. I would say maybe about 5 years or so. And I do feel like I have a lot to contribute, but at the same time, I realize that there's gaps in my knowledge. And so
Okay.
I would really love for someone who has a bit more expansive, or uh, maybe not even more of a long time reader, but just someone who has read different things than I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to hear somebody's take, just from not letting myself feel like the sole voice or like one of the kind of few voices in terms of the comic readers.
I hear that. But yeah, listen, if this is your first show, I apologize, but hopefully you got a lot out of it. This is a little different from the format that we normally do.
I think
But
this is one of the longer ones too, right?
what'd you say?
I think this is one of the longer ones too, right?
I don't know. We've had some pretty long episodes, but this has been a fairly long episode. I'll try to break it up as best as possible, so that it's not the massive listen for the listener. But if you've stuck with us for this long, kudos to you. But we should probably wind it down. So until next time, all things are possible.